So, welcome to another episode of Conversations with an Investor. For those of you that have tuned in so far, you'll see some of the topics that I've covered, and the topic that comes up the most, which has been fairly surprising, is Andrew Tate right? And I guess it's a hot topic at the moment because of the controversy surrounding the character that is Andrew Tate. So to hone in on exactly what that means is the piece that most people try to work out is some of his statements about living in the matrix and the banking system and finance as a whole, and some of the things that are bandied about. He talks about central bank digital currencies, fractional reserve lending, and the control piece. And I guess when you're looking at it through an investor's eyes, you generally have the situation where you need to look at, is this reality or is it just a media hype? Because the guy's a media personality and he's looking for topics that will be viral. So is he right? And I guess the answer is it depends. Having looked at what Andrew Tate's point of view is on the majority of the financial side, he's about 90% of the way there. And I even messaged him to say, hey, look, on the whole, on the piece, you're sort of really, really on the money, but there's a few little bits that you haven't quite covered off. So the easiest way to talk about these things is through a story, because central bank digital currencies and digital banking and the whole piece, it's really, really difficult for people to get their head around. And I guess the overall thing is that what Andrew Tate warns about is the control. So the control piece from the documents that's been released from the central bankers is that they would like to remove the ability to have a third party. That third party, the man in the middle, is the current banking system. So what they want is people to have a bank account with the central bank rather than your Lloyds or Santander, Bank of Scotland, NatWest, Bank of America, all these sorts of institutions. They want you to have a direct account with them. And on the face of it, it seems okay. It seems fine. Electronic transactions, you're dealing with one body, been around for many, many years. What's the issue? Why is there a problem? So let me tell you a story. I have a good friend, fellow investor, heavily involved in the financial sector. He was doing a transaction that was between two different countries. So he was transferring money from one currency to another, and he was moving it from one country to a different country. And he had his entire bank account frozen, and his not just the transactional amount, but the entire account was stopped under the guise of it needed further checks and so on. And what that meant was that if let's say that was his only account, he couldn't transfer any money out. He couldn't pay anyone. He couldn't, fill up the car. Couldn't buy the shopping until this was resolved. So he asked for the information to see, why have you queried this? And they said, well, it was regulations and terms and conditions. When he queried it further, he says, well, can you point out which regulations that you feel that have been breached? And can you provide me the information in your terms and conditions? And that banking institute just went, no, we can't give you any further information until it's resolved. So on one side of it, you've got a touch of a key. The ability to transact was shut off. And this is what Andrew Tate speaks about. He speaks about being able to be shut off. And if you look at his recent activity, where he spent some time at the pleasure of the Romanian authorities, property was seized, cars were seized, bank accounts were frozen. So it's not something that people it never happens to them. Look at Andrew Tate, happened to him. Now, even guys that aren't as controversial as Andrew Tate, like my friend, happened to him. And you might think it's once in a blue moon. Well, you ever been out when you've got only a card on you, a bank card, and the card declines? You know you've got money in the bank. You know that the card is fine, but you could be filling up your car with petrol. You could be buying an item of clothing. You could be out, getting your kids some new shoes, and it just declines. What do? You feel helpless. And that's what Andrew Tate tries to bring people attention to. That helplessness is becoming more of a thing, because the people that are wanting to promote this new idea of transacting, they have some ideas of how they would like you to do it. And I recently was at a place in Glasgow, a place called Topgolf. My son decided that he wanted to go there for his birthday. We went to the Topgolf place, booked it online, and great time, great place, really well set up. Staff were cool, place is cool, games were cool. Had a nice time. Ordered some food, some drinks, and big thumbs up. So as they do, bring you the bill at the end. He says, "Look, there's your bill." So opened it up. There's the receipt. Counted out the cash. Stuck it in the envelope. The wallet, kind of leather wallet that they bring. Put it in there. And as we were leaving, the waitress had come up and says, "You needing the card machine?" And I says, "No, I've left the cash." She says, "I'm afraid we don't accept cash." I said, "That seems strange." I says, why do you not accept cash? She says, "It's just policy." I says, "Well, the whole idea is that we have something called legal tender. And legal tender means that we agree to transact using this. And I'm afraid that you can't discriminate against one form or the other, even if that's your policy. Your policy can't overrule how we operate in this country. And your policy's doing that." And says, "I'm happy to speak to your manager." So the manager came along. Says, "Look, can you pay by card?" I says, "Why do you not accept cash?" Says, "Well, because you have, that's just a company policy." So I explained again. I says, "Look, you cannot discriminate against physical pounds against digital pounds." Says, "I'm happy to offer my legal tender. I'm happy to pay cash." And, that's company policy. And it might seem fickle that you go, "Well, just pay by card." It's like, well, what happens when the people that make your card decide that you can't or cannot spend money? Just like what happened to my friend. What happens when they go to your bank account and shut it down, or block it, or suspend it, or freeze your balance until some crazy regulations checked? And this is what Andrew Tate talks about. So is he right? I think he's very much in the ballpark. So back to Topgolf. The manager was obviously very dissatisfied that I wasn't budging. And I says, "Look, I will offer to agree to your payment method with your policy if you give me a letter on your letterhead explaining that I've explained to you that you're breaching some rules, that you stand by your position, that you're going to stand by your policy, and I want you to sign it. I want you to sign it with your name as a manager, as the person that's in charge here." He says, "I want you to sign that piece of paper. And if you do, then great. I'll go and speak to whoever made your policy, and I'll have a chat with them. But I need it in writing from you that we've had this discussion and that you're standing by it." He wouldn't agree to do it. I says, "Okay." I says, "We have some rules in this country that legal tender means that you must accept this." So the Bills of Exchange Act in 1882 was a rule that's never been rescinded. It's an act that says that explains this whole piece. So you brought me a bill, I've agreed to pay it, I've offered you legal tender, and you've refused it. And under the Bills of Exchange Act, you've refused the payment, not me. So the guy says, "Look, if you don't make the payment by card, I'm going to call the police." I says, "Well, call him, I'll wait." And I watched as he was dejected. I says, "Because I haven't refused payment, I've offered you legal tender, I've explained the legislation that you broke. I've explained that your policy might be a policy, but it doesn't actually fit within the rules that we have all agreed by, and that you haven't actually said that you'll put this in writing. So I'm quite happy with my position. And from where I stand, you're the one that's refusing payment because I've offered you in legal tender. And back to the Andrew Tate thing, is people might go, well, why not just, for the hassle, just don't pay by card? Well, what happens when the people that have your currency, as in a central bank or a central bank digital currency or any banking institute, and they hit bump with a key and stop you being able to transact, and then you go to somewhere else where the only way to transact is with that electronic method, then you have your choice removed. This isn't about, should you do one or the other? This is about giving us the choice. We should be able to choose what to do. And this is the thing that these guys like, central bank, some of the main guys in finance, Valuetainment, Patrick Bet-David, Richard Werner, Professor Werner, they've all been telling us it for long enough. And I have questions frequently about, what do you think about this? This is what I recorded an episode 18 months ago, recorded an interview where we discussed this. The problem with these tools is that they seem benign, but later on they can become a problem. So I guess the overall point that I'm trying to get across to you is Andrew Tate right? And I think that whether you like it or not, whether you agree with his views on certain things is neither here nor there. That's up to you. He might have some controversial ones, but is he right about the financial piece? I think he's on the money. And the example in Topgolf, where you have these big businesses that are in lockstep with, you can only transact with the way that we decide, despite the rules. But we've decided that our policy trumps the rules. I'm afraid that's not going to work. And it's about becoming aware of those sort of tricks that are out there and to be mindful of it. You might pay by card. I've certainly paid by card. I don't have an issue with paying by card. What I do have issue with is removing my choice to be able to transact with different methods of payment. And Andrew Tate's piece was on overall that if you have only one way to transact with only one bank, which would be the central bank via the central bank digital currencies, then that means if you pop a tweet out that they don't like, or you pop out a post that they don't like, or even do a podcast like this where you're drawn to the attention that you maybe want to be mindful of this, you don't need to play along, because there is rules out there. Just because someone says it's a policy, just because someone says they'll phone the police, just because you stand your ground, you have the choice and you have the power. So what does that, where does that fit in terms of how you do these sorts of things when you're working out what, what's coming up next and what to do? Because as an investor, that's the whole thing that you get surrounded by, which is, what can I currently see? How can I interpret that information that I can see currently? And how can I piece together these puzzle pieces, and where is it likely to go? And when you work out the think tank, the main think tank's World Economic Forum, and it's no secret what they want to get to. And it's no secret that Andrew Tate is very much on the pulse of what they're trying to do, along with some of the big guys. Joe Rogan has spoken about it. Jocko Willink has spoken about it. Jordan Peterson has spoken out about it. Andrew Tate has spoken out about it. These guys are really, really on the pulse of what's going on. And the main thing for you to be mindful of is that these guys aren't sitting there with a tin hat talking nonsense or being controversial or going out trying to say, hey, look, let me just get views. Nothing could be further from the truth. Keep focused on you being able to have the choice. Don't fall into the trap. And when you're doing these little investigations, just try and argue both sides. How I would argue this is there any issues with central banking? So what's the pros for central banking? One authority that removes interpretation of the rules. One place that reduces the transaction costs and reduces the amount of staff that's required. lowers the transaction fees, it creates transparency, it means that there's a more efficient way of doing it, and it could solve a number of problems. What's the other side of that? It's the invasion of privacy, because unfortunately with one institute having all the information means that transparency also removes a great deal of privacy. The second thing is that if it's one institute, you don't have a competition of people trying to compete. And some of the places that we've seen that is in the Soviet Union, where you have no choice. You can only transact with one organisation, and that is a bit of a problem, because where do you go if you don't like it? And when you have one body, it means that they can write the rules, and whether you like them or not, what can you do? And that's the issue that we see here with the central banking piece, is that if we are not going to push back, and we're not going to say, hey, this is enough, then we just leave the door wide open for them to push further rules, further infringements on your privacy, removing the choices that you have. Can you pay cash? Can you pay by card? And so on. And I mean, even things like, call me nostalgic, but imagine, in Scotland we have a tradition where there's a wedding and the married couple throw out coins, and the kids all scramble in to pick up the coins and see what they can earn out of the scramble. Giving kids a birthday card. It's a birthday and you want to stick some money in the card. I thought it was great. As a kid growing up, you would open up the card and some money would fall out. Giving a tip to somebody that's giving you great service. How would we do these things? It's everything's tracked, everything's logged. You would need to fall into line with whatever rules that they set. And bearing in mind, the central bank isn't part of the government, so you're talking about an institute that's out with normal government rules. So these are some of the issues that I see, and a lot of the people ask me about Andrew Tate, and I think reviewing the information that he's put out there, I think that he's actually on point, and doing little episodes like these is important, because I was asked about inflation and what had happened, and where I think interest rates are going to go. And around 18 months ago, I'd done an interview where I went over all the things that would happen, all the information that we discussed, all the actions that were going to be taken. And you know what baffles me now, and it baffles me now that people will ask me now what I was explaining to them 18 months ago, but 18 months ago they weren't interested, because like, hey, everything's rosy, why bother? You're crazy, what are you talking about? Nothing's going to change, good times, yeah. And then 18 months later they're like, oh, I can't believe this has happened, and I had no clue. I'm like, the clues were everywhere. And those same situations, just like we'd seen 18 months ago, those same situations, there is more of them happening now, just like the cash. Hey, look, I'm happy to pay cash. I don't want to use card. I want to use cash. It should be my choice. And we have legal tender. If you want to operate here, conduct business, these are what you should be using. So we want to preempt what is coming, be aware that we have the choice, be aware that we have the power to do something about it. But most of all, don't fall into the trap where you turn around and go, I never knew. Because people out there have been telling you, and even if you love him or hate him, Andrew Tate was right. And that's a wrap on this week's episode of Conversations with an Investor. Find us on all the social media channels. Come and have a look at some of the clips. We're uploading every single day. Chapters of this will be on YouTube. Visit the podcast website, cwipodcast.com. Leave comments. We've had some great episodes. We've got some fascinating ones coming soon. So keep tuned in. Subscribe to the channel. Like and comment below. So if you've got any suggestions, tips, anything that's on your mind, pop them in. We'll take a look. And if it's good, we'll discuss it on the episode. But from me, that's all for this bonus episode. And that's a wrap.